Over the last 10 years, Calgary's housing market has gone on one of the wildest rides in the entire country. It's had a complete identity crisis. The very things that made it tick have totally changed, and now it's trying to figure out what comes next. So let's dive into how this incredible roller coaster happened. And that really is the big question here, isn't it? How does a housing market's entire DNA get rewritten in just 10 years? I mean, we're not just talking about prices going up and down. This is about the fundamental rules of the game being completely upended. The answer, as you'll see, is a crazy mix of global shocks and some really intense local pressures. And this right here, this says it all. A decade ago, if you wanted to know where Calgary's housing market was headed, you watched the price of oil. Simple. Today, you're honestly better off checking the latest sale price for a bungalow in Toronto. It's a mind-blowing shift. Let's break down how we got here. All right, so here's our roadmap. We're going to start with the massive oil shock that really kicked this whole thing off. Then, we'll walk through this really surprising period of stagnation where the market got hit with a double whammy tax squeeze. After that, the story takes a turn with the unexpected affordability boom, which leaves us right up to today and what we're calling the Great Rebalancing. And then finally, we'll take a look at what the future might hold. Okay, Chapter 1, the Great Oil Shock. This is the moment where Calgary's classic identity, the ultimate Canadian boom and bust oil town, just ran headfirst into a brick wall. And the speed of this was just staggering. I mean, think about it. In mid-2014, oil is humming along at about $100 a barrel. By early 2015, it's been sliced in half. The fallout was immediate. Investment just vanished, export money dried up, and by the end of that year, unemployment in Alberta was surging. And you better believe the housing market felt that pain instantly. In 2015 alone, sales just fell off a cliff, down 26%. Prices started to slide. And then, for the first time in a long time, more people were actually packing up and leaving Alberta than were moving in. The boom was well and truly over. So, after a shock like that, you'd probably expect a slow, grinding recovery, right? But nope. What happened next was different. The market didn't just bounce back. It got completely stuck, wedged in this long period of stagnation, getting squeezed from both the federal level in Ottawa and right at home at City Hall. The first big speed bump was national. In 2018, the feds brought in the B20 mortgage stress test. Now, the main idea was to cool off the absolutely blistering hot markets in Toronto and Vancouver. It basically meant you had to prove you could afford your mortgage payments at a much higher interest rate than the one you were actually getting. And hey, don't just take my word for it. The Bank of Canada itself said the policy worked. It made the whole banking system safer. But for a market like Calgary that was already on the ropes, it was like slamming on the brakes of a car that was barely even moving. It just sucked the buying power right out of the market when it needed it most. Then came the squeeze from right here at home. That oil crash I mentioned, it completely hollowed out Calgary's downtown office towers, leaving a massive, gaping hole in the city's budget. Well, cities still have to pay for things like roads and fire trucks, so that missing tax money had to come from somewhere. The burden got shifted right onto homeowners, and their share of the tax load jumped a staggering 47% in just 5 years. And all that, it sets the stage for the biggest plot twist in this entire story. Just as the local economy was sort of getting back on its feet, this powerful, brand new force just took over the market, turning Calgary's biggest weakness, its flat, stagnant prices, into its greatest strength. See, by 2020, the affordability gap between Canada's big cities had become a giant chasm. In Toronto, the average home price was almost 14 times what the median household earned in a year. 14. In Calgary, that number was closer to 5. That massive difference created this huge economic incentive for people to start looking west. And look west they did. In just a single year, between 2022 and 2023, Alberta saw a net gain of over 50,000 people from other provinces. This wasn't just a trickle, folks. This was a flood. A historic, record-breaking flood of people. And it created this brand new phenomenon that people started calling affordability arbitrage. It's simple, really. People realized they could sell their 2-bedroom condo in Vancouver or Toronto, cash out, and buy a beautiful detached house with a backyard in Calgary. That powerful financial pull started a wave of migration that just completely steamrolled the local market dynamics and kicked off a boom nobody saw coming. Which brings us right up to today. After a few years of frantic price growth, bidding wars, and just chaos, the market is finally entering a new phase. We're calling it the Great Rebalancing because a massive wave of new construction is at last starting to catch up to all that relentless demand. The numbers from mid-2025 really tell the whole story. Look at this. Housing starts are up an incredible 56%. Builders are racing to get new homes built. But at the same time, sales of existing homes are actually slowing down, and more people are putting their houses up for sale. And for the first time in years, the benchmark price, what you'd pay for a typical home, actually dipped a little. The market is finally taking a much-needed breath. But what's really fascinating is the kind of new supply that's being built. An absolutely massive 71% of new apartment construction is for purpose-built rentals. So this isn't just about building more places to buy, it's a huge fundamental shift to try and tackle the rental crisis that came along with that population boom. And this slide just captures that change perfectly. Back in 2023, there was less than 2 months of housing supply on the market. That means if nobody listed a single new home, everything would have sold out in less than 60 days. That's a frantic seller's market. Fast forward to late 2025, and that number has more than doubled to over 4 months of supply. That is the textbook definition of a balanced market. Buyers finally have some choice again, and the pressure is coming off. So the big question is, where does Calgary go from here? The market is definitely more balanced, which is good, but it's also now tied to a whole new set of national and even international risks that it never really had to worry about before. And looking ahead, there are some serious storm clouds on the horizon. There's a real risk of U.S. trade tariffs that could tip the whole country into a recession. At the very same time, the federal government is actually cutting back on immigration targets, which could slow down the very population growth that fueled this whole boom. These big national issues now cast a real shadow of uncertainty directly over Calgary. So, what are the experts predicting for prices? Well, the general consensus seems to be moderation. Most analysts are looking at modest gains, maybe in the 3 to 5% range for 2026. But the really interesting part is the split. While detached homes are expected to stay pretty stable, that flood of new supply we talked about could actually push condo and apartment prices down a little bit. And this all leads us to the big takeaway. Calgary has fundamentally changed. It is not just a boom and bust oil town anymore. It's become a destination city, a crucial release valve for Canada's entire national housing crisis. But that new identity comes with a major catch. Its fate is no longer entirely in its own hands. It's now tied to these much bigger national and even global forces. And that leaves us with the one massive question for the next decade. The city's entire recent boom was built on one single thing, being the affordable option. Now, with builders going full throttle, the race is on. Can Calgary build fast enough to actually stay that way? The answer to that question will define its future.